We'll keep asking questions and go to this. My first questions were, what is the point of CNCF? Why are we doing this? What's the goal?
Hey guys, it's Bassam.
Hey, Bassam, how you doing?
Hey, Clint, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hold on, I can't hear you. Hey, Clint, hey, Bassam, you've got Vinod and Luis here from Portworx.
Hey guys, good to see you.
Hey. You're officially at Portworx now, Luis, huh? You're like in the conference rooms. That's cool.
Exactly right. I flew down just for this meeting.
You flew down for this meeting, right?
Yeah.
And he's even wearing a collared shirt.
Yeah.
So.
What is going on today, man?
I have to look presentable.
This is the dress code in Portworx.
Enterprise storage, have to keep it classy.
There you go.
This is like the brain trust here. This is like how much money is in this meeting? I'm now wondering.
We have a ticker above the door.
All right, so
Gu can't join because he's at a customer site. So otherwise we would contribute even more.
okay, no problem at all. I'm just glad you guys could make it. I know it was kind of a last minute meeting, and I think that we've been having our storage working group meetings for we've had 6 or 7 of them. I think in the last 3 we've been stuck on this concept of getting past what is cloud native storage. So I figure it takes some meetings outside of the normal cycle just to hammer some of this out and get some agreement and move forward. Where do you guys want to start?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, the definitional things are hard because everybody has their own perspective, and I think Tim's perspective is, a valid one, much different from I think the perspective of a lot of people in this room coming from a different background. So I honestly I don't know where to start, Clint, because it's a hard problem. But I guess I wanted to just acknowledge that that it is a hard problem, and also to say thank you for kind of being an intermediary between like all of the different competing interests. So I appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you, Clint. You're definitely helping out. I actually took a stab at a few pages. I wonder if we could start there, and if nothing else, I try to do a fresh start on given all the things I heard, and maybe I'm completely off, but I thought maybe we could look at it and see if it makes sense or holds water.
Yeah.
You guys want to do that?
Sounds good to me.
Here's a link. I think, Clint, I know I sent you this like an hour ago or so, but I literally just wrote this today. So,
and I just was able to open it up just a minute ago, so I'm looking at it pretty much with everybody else.
So I put it in chat if you guys want to open it up.
Could you send it to me in Slack
Here.
on Kubernetes so I can put it up here?
I've got it. I'll send it to you.
So you guys have it open? You want me to walk through it?
Just
Sure.
Okay, so the first section, what I try to do is essentially go, starting from cloud native computing, try to progressively add terms so that we can arrive at something, to arrive at cloud native storage, from all the way up from cloud native computing, which I think is not controversial, and this came directly out of the charter document, right? So let's start there.
see the screen?
Cool. So cloud native computing is, essentially distributed systems that have the following properties. They're packaged in containers, they're dynamically managed, and they're microservices oriented. That's the definition that's on the CNCF charter. So let's start with that, and then now let's introduce stateful, stateless. So I would say that if a cloud native system is made up of microservices, let's classify the microservices as both stateless and stateful. So stateless would be ones that don't manage or store state beyond the scope of a request, session, or transaction.
Okay, just make sure I don't get lost. What part of the document are you on?
I'm on page 1.
Okay.
And we should look primarily at the definitions, but
Got it. I see it now.
but it's so again, starting from cloud native computing and the notion of microservices and the notion of dynamically managing container packaged, I'm introducing one definition here that says you're a stateless microservice if you don't manage state beyond a request, session, or transaction. We can wordsmith all of this, but let me walk through it, and then we could talk through it. So therefore, stateful is services that store state beyond what is part of a request, session, or transaction. So that's stateful.
Okay, just so you know that like Core OS, and they call stateless applications that use object store.
Okay, well, good for them.
Well, I'm just letting you know because I'm telling you, we are storage guys, right?
Yeah.
And as not storage people,
Yeah.
the application stateless if when they run.
Well, I've not used the word storage yet. So
I think that
if you look at a set of microservices, we can classify stateful and stateless. Okay. So then
I don't disagree with what you're saying here. I agree with you.
Yeah, my thing is that you're saying store state beyond the scope of a request. Well, the scope of a request itself is kind of ill-defined. And storing state, I would say that stateless is something that its state is ephemeral. It will go back and it can go away and come back and yet take off from where it left off. If it is storing state, then it's still, like Lewis said, it's in some other stateful service where it's actually storing.
So let's find a stronger definition of state and stateless and stateful. But I think you guys get the concept.
Is it hard to use definition or pivot towards persistent and non-persistent?
I struggle with that one, but we could try it on for size. I mean, it's durability. It's probably is it durable beyond, or does it have an independent life cycle? You can look at this in many ways, but
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
So then you could look at this and say, I have stateless services, one that don't have state and one that are stateful, just like this diagram, and they can both run on the same cloud native environment, or there is a class of stateful services that could also run outside of the cloud native environment. So let's just call those external stateful services. And some of these external stateful services could be consumed by other stateless services or consumed by the cloud native environment itself. They're external, they manage state,
Got it.
So,
Yes.
okay. With me so far?
Yep.
Okay, so now let's introduce storage. So I'm making the claim that a storage service is a class of stateful services, external or not, that offer low-level storage primitives, and specifically volumes. So the primitives that they are providing as a service, the things that they're exposing as a service, are volumes. So let's call those storage services.
So can I be the devil's advocate, and I'll be
Yes.
talking here?
Please.
You know, if you do something pretty easy and you go to GCE storage in
Yep.
Google,
Yep.
or cloud storage or something like that, like it doesn't refer to volumes or block storage. If you do the same thing in AWS and you look at how they classify the different services under EC2, you know, it doesn't refer, EBS isn't the only storage.
That's right.
So I think that's been one of the big things we've been kind of dealing with is what is cloud native storage at that very high level. And I think that some people are going to say, yeah, it's volumes. Like if you have a storage background, like I do, I have a heavy storage background, and my tendency is to say if it's a network compute or storage, like that low level semantic, like that's just what we know it by. But I think the devil's advocate, or at least the progressive side, would say, hey, storage just captures more stuff nowadays. And
and I think that that's a healthy debate to have, and I think that there is actually, like, I mean, that's why I'm trying to distinguish between stateful services and storage services. I mean, I would argue everything fits under stateful, including databases and everything else, right? We also have this thing that the CNCF defined called the Common Storage Interface, which is really all about provisioning volumes.
Yeah,
and they use the word storage there in the context of volumes.
Well, so CNCF didn't do that, and I'll be Tim Hawken again, okay?
Yes. Yes.
I disagree with the naming of it. That it's not the common storage interface; it's actually the container storage interface.
Sorry, container storage. Yeah.
Volume interface, if it's more precise, right?
That's right. But the way that it's set up right now, it implies that storage, you know, equals volume.
Yeah. Let me add just kind of cutting a little bit here. I understand what Poseidon's doing, trying to build a definition chain to get to a solution.
Yeah.
So that, because sometimes we all come from different directions with different backgrounds on how we think of storage. So I agree that it may not be the perfect answers and definitions, but let's continue the flow because I think you're building up a story on its definitions until you get to solutions.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you know, there is no science behind this, honestly, at some level. It's what would resonate with people and how we define it. I realize that, you know, with every definition and every terminology, there's, you know, there are many ways you can look at it. But the idea here is to put something together that we could maybe review with others. If we can arrive at consensus, then I think we have a chance of getting others to buy into this. So
I agree with you there, and I'll let you go because I want to hear the story. I'm playing Tim because Tim's going to be one of the loudest vocal critics, and I think I read that.
And I've had a side discussion with him. I'm happy that he's not seen this. I think if I can soften him up, if you'd like, before the discussion next week. But okay, so just moving on. So, you know, storage services are essentially stateful services that expose volumes. And volumes come in different shapes and sizes, and I won't even get into, you know, shared volumes and snapshots. And I mean, they vary a lot. But let's just start with storage services that are ones that expose volumes.
Sure.
So then the next definition would be, well, now we're going to talk about storage interfaces. Storage interfaces are essentially plugin interfaces that enable the cloud-native environment to consume volumes from storage services. Right? So CSI being the great example here.
Yeah.
And then it's important to talk about local volumes. Local volumes are volumes, but they're ones attached to a node and are not provided by a storage service. So I think there is no service behind a local volume in this definition. And we should I know there's a lot of discussion about local volumes and storage. So even though that they're typically orchestrated and exposed by a container, a cloud native environment, they are not provided by a storage service using this definition.
Okay.
And so somehow we have to make that clear. So now we arrive at what is cloud native storage. So I'd argue, given the definitions here, the chain of definitions, that cloud native storage is a class of storage services that have the following properties. They expose standard storage interfaces. This is the interoperable theme. They can be dynamically provisioned. The volumes can be dynamically provisioned. And obviously they're scalable and reliable. So that's now implied in all of this is that, well, obviously now they could be external, they could be internal. You could talk about how you build them, whether they're orchestrated or not, and all that stuff. But I think the most compatible definition of cloud native storage, the one that's most compatible with, I think, how, say, CSI and others have been looking at this, and it is their storage services that expose volumes, that speak standard interfaces, and that can be dynamically provisioned and are scalable and reliable. So that, with this definition, I argue that everybody that's doing a CSI implementation fits this bill for the most part. Most people behind storage, like EBS and Google Persistent Disk and Portworx and Rook and everything else would be considered cloud native storage by this definition, right? They all differ, they all vary, but they are all storage services, and that it will talk common interfaces to and can dynamically provision volumes. Now it's not the universe of all stateful applications or services. This doesn't include key value stores and everything else. But I think that's actually, quite honestly, one, beyond the scope of this group, and two, these services here are foundational for the other stateful services. They can be used to build other stateful services. So maybe we could scope it along those lines.
Yeah, I follow this and I like it, right? I'm just trying to think in my head that, for example, object store people may not like it so much because they won't satisfy B on here. Although they can, in a way, provision by creating new containers and buckets. But in a way, I like the story that you've done, and I like the destination that this is, right?
Yeah.
So I am okay with this, but I do want to give Clinton a chance to talk. But I do want to say that I'm not opposed to it, and I'm not super fine for it. But I think if this was shown to me, I would agree with it. I'd be okay with it.
Cool. Clinton, the floor is yours.
Any other comments out there? It looked like the laptop moved there.
Oh yeah, it's just he's looking at the document.
Oh yeah, I'm both doing the video on my laptop and the and looking at the.
Yeah, I mean, so I think that like you're telling us.
So one question I have is, hey, sorry, can you guys still hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So one question I have is, so obviously there are differences between compute and storage, but if I look at kind of, so I think we all understand that this is not an academic exercise where truth is the ultimate arbiter, but rather a political exercise, right? So something that enough people can agree with that it becomes the thing that we can publish. So part of this is really about like, what's the easy path that we also happen to all agree with or not hate. So I look at kind of what has the CNCF already stood behind, and that's the cloud native computing definition. So I say what elements of those could also be applied in a non-controversial way to storage. And one that stands out for me, and I think is maybe it's just my perspective, but is also important, is the container packaged. So there's something about, cloud native storage being packaged itself as containers and being able to be managed with the same management tool chain as the rest of the application. So I'll pick a little bit on EMC, Clint, and this is now me channeling Tim. So Rexray has a driver for Vmax. Vmax is, very, or maybe it doesn't. Let's assume that it does. So there's an like unquestionably enterprise class, reliable, highly performant storage system that people are running mission critical workloads on today. If you can dynamically provision a volume on top of that, and it's scalable and reliable and has a standard storage interface, I think one thing that Tim would say is, does that make it cloud native storage? And so I don't know that it does. Certainly being able to run and manage your application via Kubernetes, it feels like, and you're consuming underlying resources, that certainly feels cloud native, but is that cloud native storage? So there's something about like the container packaging mechanism that seems important to capture, at least with Bricks.
I think we've talked about this one before, and so does cloud native, is that a property of the storage system itself, or is cloud native refer to the fact that you can consume storage from a cloud native service or app?
Yeah, that's a good way. That's a good way to frame the question.
And I think if I remember correctly, when we talked about this last, the most common definition is that it's storage consumable by other cloud native applications. And so I try to avoid this here, and I said there are some external services. That's why that external piece came into this, external services.
Yeah.
And we can play on that one, right? We can figure out how to define that more clearly. But there are external storage services, and there are ones that run on the cloud native environment. They're both storage services.
Yeah, I think like a great example, Michael. Like, obviously you work for Portworx, right? And you guys have a containerized storage solution.
Yeah.
And obviously Vmax is a Dell thing. We don't sell much Vmax with containers, so I don't really care. But I think the point is that, if you take an example and you look at the existing ecosystem of stuff that could be cloud native storage, and you start to characterize it, existing platforms like AWS, like EBS volumes,
right?
It's existing. Like, nobody should really care that it's EBS. Yeah. It's on the interface. It works. And then you go through the capabilities or classifications, and you kind of determine how cloud native is this thing. Mm-hmm. So I feel like the checkboxes to say you're cloud native aren't that you're as yourself containerized and dynamically managed. It's really that you're interoperable with a certain base set of expectations that enable someone to be successful with Kubernetes.
Completely agree.
I
don't know. What do you think, Michael?
Yeah, no, it's fair. I mean, and I think these are the types of things we just need to bring up and discuss. So EBS is just a SAN operated by AWS. So in a lot of ways, yes, you kind of by extension, if we agree that a cloud block store can be cloud native, kind of because it's cloud, then having some other storage substrate doesn't preclude it. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to be frank here, I think we should, to the extent possible, we should try to avoid defining cloud native storage as a way to differentiate storage vendors and their implementations,
yep.
but rather to be a little more functional, a functional definition. Any definition that excludes EBS and Google Persistent Disk from the picture, I think would be wrong, because arguably EBS is actually the most used cloud native storage system today. Given the number of people that run Kubernetes in Amazon today, and they're all using EBS, directly or indirectly, it doesn't matter, right? So, and given that CSI, which is using, the S is for storage, will provision EBS and Google Persistent Disk, I think the definition should make it clear that it should work for all of them.
Yep. No, I agree with you there. So that's that point. This other one though around like how to capture cloud native storage as a term. I don't think it's the scope of our group to like be detailed in this area, but I think it's the scope of it to at least say what it's not, right? And by I think that capturing the cloud native storage as a term is important, but also like moving the puck forward and saying, if you're talking about what we used to think about with storage, you're really just talking about volume functionality in this area. And if you're talking about higher level data services because you're using things more efficiently and you've actually rewritten apps to leverage those data structures, that tends to be something else, which is maybe captured by data services. So I feel like it's possible to just broadly capture cloud native storage with some key things, which are similar to what you've defined there, Wissam. And then, fitting different platforms underneath there, like I feel it's all possible. And I guess where I'm getting is, so I like the story. I think there's some key things to just get everybody to agree on. I think the next step is like practically applying some of those ideas. And actually like looking at the platform. So I put together something that we could take a look at if you guys wanted to go through that exercise real quick. And I think the terminology can be changed, but we could at least look at it so you guys see where I was thinking and what I was creating. It gives a more practical view of it.
Absolutely.
Take a peek.
Yeah, just one thing while you look for the send the link. Wissam, I think that the other people who were in the group yesterday, one of the things I was trying to do yesterday was define categories. So we have the cloud native storage volumes, which is what you described here, and then maybe there's data services, and then there's object store. But I think that in a way, they're all cloud native storage services, right? So I'm trying to just continue your story in a way that encompasses the questions from yesterday. Now,
I think one thing, Luis, though, I'll say, and let me pick on a very extreme example, right? Let's take a key value store.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, now, would you call that storage in the classic sense, or would you call that data service?
Data storage? I don't know if I call it in the classic sense storage.
I mean, that's I kid you not, this is the argument that we're having, like at the lot of time, is whether to call any form of persistence of any kind storage. Should storage be the umbrella term or not? That's the.
That's, I mean, and I'm only doing this to play devil's advocate.
I understand. No, but I go back to why is this working group called the storage working group?
Yeah.
But
right.
Does it mean that the storage work group could have volume work group, which is us, and it could have the key value store or data services work group, like for databases, which is another.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think part of the issue is that there is no effort right now in the community to say normalize on key value store interfaces or normalize on database interfaces, or truly the only thing that's in scope right now for this whole working group is CSI. There's no other project.
But that's not even part of CNCF.
What CSI is part of CNCF.
No,
it's not.
And that's actually the biggest, like.
CSI is likely to be a CNCF project, just like CNI.
We hope so. Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, given the effort around CNCF and the CNCF folks are putting in CSI.
Yeah.
So let me take a quick step back, right? The storage working group was formed because the TOC was evaluating projects, and the people on the TOC didn't have a huge background in storage. Some of them were a lot of them were just very microservices focused, and kind of went down the 12-factor app like religion, and they just needed help to understand it. And so the SWG was formed to help provide some guidance and help sort through the smoke of what was going on. It was called the storage working group for no other reason than that was an easy term to grab at the time. And maybe it's the wrong term. If you look at the CNCF landscape, right, they've got a cloud native storage bucket, but there's no rhyme or reason why things were actually put in there. There's projects like Rexray that aren't storage platforms. They may be like a tool like we've talked about, but it's in that bucket. And then there's other projects that are storage platforms. So it's a bit of a mess right now, and it's we're here trying to help them sort it out essentially.
Sure. And so, maybe I'll ask this differently. Let's assume we use the word, let's take the alternative view. Let's use the word storage to refer to everything that's persistent service, right? So now that includes literally storage service equals stateful service in my definition here.
That's right. Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. What is this group going to do with that? What are we hoping to achieve if that was the definition? First of all, the cloud native environment, Kubernetes or others, will not be consuming all stateful services. They're it uses etcd, but that's not a common interface. That's an implementation choice. I don't know if there's a need for...
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I mean, from my view, my vision of it, a cloud native platform like Kubernetes should be facilitating that relationship. If it's got an application that needs to be dynamically managed, it's going to be dynamically managing and grabbing whatever resources it needs, whether it's a key value.
Completely agree.
Right?
And so what are the foundational pieces that something like Kubernetes should provide so that people can build these higher level stateful services?
Yeah. Well, I don't know about build them. I think, the first question for me is make them interoperate. Right. So if I've got something that needs a key value store, then how do I actually get that hooked up to the key value store?
So that ship has sailed. They already provide volumes are an API object in Kubernetes.
I think we're talking different points. I've got a service that's Mongo, right? And I'm going to run Mongo myself. Obviously, that's going to use the volume services because it stores files and et cetera, right?
Yeah.
If I've got a microservice, right, that needs to consume from Mongo, how do I actually get that microservice plumbed up to be able to talk to this Mongo database? And maybe it's creating a new space in Mongo with tables, maybe it's doing other stuff like that. There's a kind of an east-west orientation that the apps need to do. And I think that there is a space for something like Kubernetes to facilitate that type of connection. It's you think about...
So those things exist with, you can extend Kubernetes and teach it about a CRD for Mongo.
Yeah.
And go write a Mongo operator.
Right, and there's OSs, right? There's Open Service Broker,
Yeah, you can use brokers, you can use catalogs, all the different catalogs. You can argue Helm is already in that, category for doing some of this stuff. My question is, would people classify that all as storage? This is all part of a storage, cloud native storage and cloud native storage working under the cloud native storage group charter.
Yeah, well, let me go back a little bit to a question you had before, which was etcd, for example, as an example, and or S3 or Swift, OpenStack Swift, and goes back to what is the goal of the CNCF storage team? Because I don't know if for us it's to create standardized interfaces, because, for example, GlossRFS doesn't use a standardized interface, it has its own protocol. Ceph has its own protocol for RPD. So what I'm trying to say is that what is the goal of the CNCF storage team? And then take that and apply it to an example of maybe using etcd as an example of what would that be like if that was part of the working group?
So the goal of the working group is to make sense of the ecosystem and to provide like guidance or recommendations to the TOC about what types of projects to embrace by way of CNCF.
Okay. So that doesn't really define that the protocols have to be standardized, right?
No, and CNCF isn't doing that, but CNCF would embrace standardization initiatives if it's going to help the storage ecosystem.
Yeah, that's fine. And I think that CSI, as an example, helps standardize the provisioning, right, of and mounting and usage of volumes, right? Volume specifically.
Yeah.
But there could be another project that standardizes the key values interface, and then behind it are large key value stores, and that could be another CNCF project, right?
I completely agree with you.
And would you call that? Would you say that project that normalizes key value storage? Would we put that in the storage category?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. That it could be that,
or in the key value store category.
But that's what I mean. That the storage working group could be an umbrella of many of different categories, and what we are describing is the volumes category, right? And there's other teams we can say, look, guys, object store teams, you're awesome. But go over there to your own umbrella, section called, CNCF storage object store, and then define a standardized interface or something.
Right.
And you can send the key value store team to say, look, the database team, MongoDB and everything, saying, you guys are awesome. You provide data services. Make a working group called CNCF storage data services, right? And we provide the volumes data services.
And I'll even tell you, like, Bassam, from a product perspective, this is also interesting, and I don't want to speak for Portworx, but if you're a storage company and all you do is provide block services, you're kind of a dinosaur.
Yeah.
Right? If you're a storage company that provides block services, object services, key value store services, like all these other services that cloud native applications need, then you're actually kind of interesting moving forward. So,
and you should definitely go do that. My question is, why does that have to do with cloud native storage?
I mean, it's kind of like the clouds themselves are categorizing all of these things as storage.
They're certainly not categorizing key value stores as storage. I see your point about object storage. Certainly not. Go look at the Amazon services.
Yeah.
They have a whole category on database services.
Let's see, let's take
RDS is on there, Redis is on there, Memcached is on there. They're all under database and storage database services.
Hey guys, unfortunately, I need to run into another meeting, but Luis is going to stay and finish up.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks, guys.
Sounds good.
So anyway, what Jonathan said,
Yep.
this is just, if we have categories, it may help in the definition. That's all I'm saying. That's what I was trying to say yesterday.
Yeah.
It sounds like, honestly, the crux of the issue that we're debating here, and we've been debating even with the larger group, is what should be called storage? Does it go beyond volumes or not? That seems to me the crux of the issue.
As an EMC guy, I would say storage is my disks, right? But
I think so too. And so.
But I think the new I would say the new kids in the block, the younger generation, the generation now, they just don't view disks like that anymore because they're hidden, right?
Yeah, exactly. If you're just out of college and you're writing an application.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the Amazon.
Sorry.
I said I'm looking at the Amazon products and services page, and under storage they have S3, Glacier, Snowball, EBS, Storage Gateway, and EFS.
Mm-hmm.
And under databases they have Aurora, Amazon RDS, Dynamo, Redshift, Elastic Cache, etc. Right? Under analytics, I bet you is where their time series stuff shows, and obviously monitoring time series under CloudWatch.
Mm-hmm.
So the definition of storage here is S3 object, EBS block, EFS file.
Mm-hmm.
and a bunch of gateways and migration to moving data in and out. If you look at Google Cloud Services,
I just did a screenshot for you.
oh, cool.
Google is cloud storage products, and the first thing listed is managed databases.
Do they just say storage products?
Cloud storage products. I'll give you the link to it.
Cool. And what about Azure? Let's look at the third one, just as a...
Sure.
Don't forget Oracle's. Oracle's.
Oh, don't bring up Oracle now.
Don't forget Oracle.
That should be a shirt. Don't forget Oracle.
So Azure has databases as separate from storage. And under storage, they have blob storage, file storage, disk storage, queue storage, and data lake storage.
Let's see. I'm looking at Azure. So, databases is a separate. Yeah.
I
don't know if I'd view Azure though. Come on, like kids out of college.
You mean the second largest public cloud company?
Yeah, in terms of sales, but not actually usage though. I'm being funny.
Well, I mean, you know what I mean. I'm just trying to say that from our point of view, from 90s, 2000 point of view, if you've been working in storage all that time, storage is defined very simply as file object block.
Yeah, I mean, would Cockroach DB like to be classified as cloud native storage?
I don't know. I would have to ask them.
I mean, that's an example. Or would Redis be like to classified as cloud native storage?
Again, that's why I think that it should be called cloud native storage services, not storage services, no databases. Also storage volumes. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm on that side. I think, if I was a storage guy, and I came from 20 years ago and I've been doing it my whole life, which I have, I would say like it should just be storage, right? It's just bits and blocks, and we're doing a core service to serve applications. But I feel like the progressive side is to say, there's less and less of people doing it that way. And the new way to store information and data is to use data structures and higher level data services.
Great.
And so I feel like the progressive side is that way. So let's not beat this dead horse. Like we talked about it, we're not going to come to a decision right now.
Yeah.
Can you guys take a peek at that thing that I posted, that sheet?
Where?
It's in the channel in Slack.
Oh, good. Each channel, 6 storage?
Just storage. It's under the CNCF.
Oh, the CNCF one, right?
And I mean, I think the other honest feedback, and I was playing Tim for a reason, because like seriously, he's gonna weigh whether this gets to conclusion or not very heavily, and he's obviously very opinionated about it. Like he's someone that we should be using as we make these decisions. Like what would Tim say? Because he will be an important factor in like either being behind the group and what we define things as or not.
I just sent him this doc and asked for feedback and explain this issue. So I'll see what he says.
Okay.
I think we'll get some early feedback. I'll try to do the same with Ben. I think we're definitely, I feel clearer now about what the crux of the issue is, which is whether cloud native storage should be more than volumes or not. That seems to be the core issue here.
Exactly right.
So I think we should get some consensus around this, and either way, if it ends up being storage is the umbrella term for everything stateful, cloud native storage, then we have to use suffixes. volume services, volume services in cloud native, database services in cloud native, blah, blah, blah. If not, then we keep storage to just mean volumes, and we come up with other terms when the time comes.
Yep.
I completely agree with that.
Cool.
So
I think we made progress then.
did you take a look at that sheet, Bassam?
Where's the sheet? Oh yeah, here we go.
I'm in there.
Oh, cool.
So here's basically what we have. I got a bunch of example platforms that I threw in here to try to classify. You've got the patterns that we've been kind of iterating on in that email chain. One being at the very top end, you got the decoupled and interoperable. I think Tim was pretty hooked on decoupled, but
yeah.
I think that what he really was trying to get at was that it's interoperable or self-service and on-demand. You've got the other pattern, which is the scalability of it, which tends to just be a kind of a cloud-based pattern of being elastic. And then autonomous and dynamic is how I was capturing, different platforms like Portworx, different platforms that containerize and self-manage. I thought that that's one way that you could do that under the classification. So those are the high-level patterns, and then under those patterns, you've essentially got different capabilities on a more detailed level. So under the decoupled and interoperable, you've got dynamically consumed, which means that it's orchestrated. The next one you've got, or it means that the application is able to dynamically consume the volumes or dynamically orchestrate to make them available to store data. The next one, you've got the dynamically provisioned and managed. So that's where you can handle the life cycle of the volumes. The next one is the RBAC, and whether it's cooled, which is also a NIST definition for cloud. So that's another important one as being part of self-service. And then you've got the elastic side, which breaks out whether it's elastic from a capacity and performance perspective, and whether that is actually metered to actually limit and be able to bill and charge and impact the consumption model or how people actually consume that resource. And then that far one is self-managed for living on top of Kubernetes, etc. So,
yeah. Okay.
I also have in the platforms, I've got different types. So just like you said, Lewis, you've got a cloud native storage type. Essentially, the first one, EBS, is a volumes type. The second one is a data services type, and that provides block and then NoSQL. And then it's kind of interesting because you can then classify these types, even though they're like far different. But I think that all of these different categories are all things that you could validate like that service by. So the classification is essentially compatible with the different types of block structures that are out there.
Yeah, this would be a great matrix to put on the CNCF or some type of website, to show, the environment and the what's that called, the landscape for storage,
Yeah.
So it's good research here.
Yep.
I mean, I think the hope here is it would be a tool to be able to validate like our thinking. So what we decide on as classifications, like we put in here and see how that goes in terms of validating against a lot of the platforms that people are actually using, a lot of what we see in the wild.
Yeah, again, I think that
Yeah.
for a scenario, if I was a brand new storage vendor just coming up and I wanted to participate in this working group, I would have to see where I fit here. How do I describe my storage system, right? This would be a good way for that company or that project to categorize itself.
Yeah, if you, and given the discussion we were having earlier, if you said cloud native storage is volumes only, then you get rid of all the lines that say data services.
Yes.
You leave the ones that say volumes. You still have block or file, that's still in there. Those are different kinds of volumes. And you still have all these attributes for differentiating or properties of these systems that we should consider when evaluating them, right?
So we have like 9 minutes left. So what do you need me to do something? What can I do to help?
I think the
I think we should circulate back with Ben somehow, because I don't know what is being presented next Tuesday. And one option is to say, look, we're making progress. We're going to drop the readout next Tuesday and move it to maybe the December 5th meeting.
well, that's right before KubeCon. Like,
How about we do that? How about we recommend that we move the readout to December 5th until we sort through some of these issues? Otherwise, it's going to be like, hey, there is 2 camps and one is defining blah, blah, blah. And it, you know.
so my afternoon is open for tomorrow at 2:00. I don't know if you guys are again. Let's see if there's any feedback on that Gmail and like from Tim. Because honestly, like, it's going to be some of what he says that is probably going to steer this thing as a BD of, you know, the Kubernetes and projects. Let's see what comes back. I mean, I think the readout to the TOC will let Ben spin it and decide what he wants to say there, or we should. At least that should be some of what he decides. I would hope to have this thing at least in some kind of form, so that we can actually like talk about some of it at KubeCon.
Hey, so here's an idea. December 5th is meeting could be face-to-face at KubeCon with the TOC. You guys are going to be there, right?
Yes, I'll be there.
Does it make sense to have this discussion on the 5th? There is a TOC meeting scheduled on the 5th, and we could be in person.
I think that it's got to be resolved before KubeCon. Like,
You do?
I mean, I would love it to. Like,
Oh, okay.
we've got CSI coming up that's going to be proposed probably soon after.
Okay.
I don't know that. So, I mean, if we sit here in a room, you know, for 4 hours and we've got 30 people that express their ideas about it, like, I think at the end of the day, it's just going to be a benevolent dictator who just says, here's what it is. So,
Yeah, agree.
so
I think that's Ben, maybe the TOC.
yeah, I think it's Ben, and it's people weighing in like Tim, who are, you know, large voices in the community, and yeah, it's Ben who's going to basically make that decision. So I don't know. I don't want to recommend that we put on the brakes and say wait for a face to face, because I just don't feel like that's going to be where it gets resolved.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's just wait. Let's see if there's any more takers on that email thread to give their opinion. Let's see what Tim says, and then we can wrap back to Ben with, you know, what the status is and what we talked about, and give him an update.
Should we send him I mean, is he going to be involved in the meeting tomorrow?
I'm not sure if he will or not, but do you want to summarize some of what we talked about?
I'll summarize the discussions. I'll send it to Ben and see what he says.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.